show. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to briefly introduce why I decided to have you as a guest in this podcast. And that is, I've admired you as a speaker and someone who I consider a leader within this community of Austin. And so what I wanted to do is have you as a guest on this show and discuss the topic of self-accountability. So how do you hold yourself accountable to not only your actions, but to other people, to the group that you're creating? And with that said, I'd like to give you a second to briefly introduce who you are and what you've done and where you're going.
Well, thank you for having me. Joshua Banks, obviously, is the name. I have been in Austin most of my life. I went to college in Oklahoma, a small school outside of Tulsa. And I came back to Austin. I went to school to be a minister. I studied theology. Came back to Austin to take a pastor's position. And while I was doing that, it wasn't a paid position. So while I was doing that, I got into the world of law enforcement. And so I've been very much involved in the community in one capacity or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's given me a real interesting perspective, especially coming from those two very contrasting, well, they appear to be contrasting perspectives.
In today's world,
Yeah. So I've had the opportunity to, as time has progressed, we've had the opportunity to transition into other things. I now work for the Housing Authority. I oversee a fatherhood program. And so we go into those communities and we look for fathers and father figures, and we essentially train them or help facilitate a class that gives them information on all things related to life and parenting and being a man and communicating and perceptions of masculinity. So I've been blessed to have a good opportunity to see the world from a number of different angles.
That's amazing. You brought up a lot of good points throughout that. One of them is building a community for other people, which is, I think, a perfect segue into this theme of self-accountability. So first question that I have is, let's first define, what does it mean to be self-accountable? And then from there, jump into the topic of, okay, now that you've defined it for yourself, how do you stay accountable to other people throughout this process?
I define it as, I'm a real nerd, so I like to break the words down. So you have self, and then you have the word accountability. And when you talk about accountability, it's to bring one or something to account, or bring them to task, or kind of ask them, like, hey, so why did you do that, or did you do what you said you were going to do? And so then the idea of self is this pressure to accomplish what you said you're going to do, or to live up to the standard that you said you're going to live up to, where does that pressure come from? Growing up in school, we did sports, and so the coach is the one pressuring you to be accountable to something that you agreed to. As a team member, you sat down and said, okay, we want this goal. And so you can either choose to stay on this team to get that goal, or you can choose to leave. And so the coach's responsibility is to now come in and make sure that you're going to put in the work to get the goal that you all agreed to. And so again, going back to my point, the question is, when you talk about self-accountability, where does that pressure come from? Who's the coach in this situation? And so self-accountability, in my opinion, is where you set yourself up by yourself to be in a position to where there is a steady flow of pressure coming to get you over that hump, or to the level that you yourself have said, I've committed to this. So then you put those barriers, or you put those parameters around yourself to get you to that point.
Is there a moment in your life that was can be described as an aha moment, where you just said, okay, this is what it means to be self-accountable, not only to your actions, to other people? You brought up the story about working as a team. I think that's kind of what life is about. As much as you want to make it on your own, you can't get to certain levels of it. So is there a story within your life that stands out to you the most, whether that's with your parents or whoever else that has had an impact on your life, that it was like, okay, this is what it means to be self-accountable?
The aha moment for me, one of the ones that sticks out the most, is when I was working at the sheriff's office. I wanted to be in an elite unit, this tactical response team, and I went out for the team. I made it, I was there, and then I tore my shoulder.
Mm.
And this unit, again, is like an elite group of people. They're all in shape, they're all athletic, they're all just super, just fit. And so having that injury that left me out of the game for about a year and a half, that I was, nursing myself back to health. So
Right.
anyways, I get healthy again, and I'm not in the physical condition that I was before I'd gotten injured, obviously, because I couldn't do anything like I could before. Like running hurt and everything hurt. But now I'm in this position where I'm healing and I'm on the mend, and I had to ask myself the question, okay, are you still committed today to being in this unit as you were when you first signed up? And I had given up a lot to be on that unit. I had been accepted in another field to do another job, which was a real highly respectable field, and I was like, I turned everything down for this unit. And so I had to decide, do I really want this or do I not want this? And I had sacrificed so much for it. So that meant that I had to start doing some things I didn't want to do. Not that I didn't enjoy working out. I didn't enjoy working out with the pain that I was experiencing.
Absolutely.
I didn't enjoy the pressure from other people saying, hey, are you going to stay? Are you going to leave? We need to know by this amount of time. And other people not believing that I would be physically capable of getting myself back to that level.
Interesting.
And so I had to decide, what did I want? And I think that's the issue of self-accountability many times, is really deciding, what do you want?
For yourself.
For yourself. And then the test comes, and then the test questions your decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want this? And so that's where you have to make the decision.
How do you develop that self-belief in knowing that you can hold yourself accountable?
For different people, I find it different, because as I work with the fathers in our fatherhood program, we'll have conversations with people where a lot of people are hesitant to engage with their children because they don't feel like they personally have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And so because they don't feel that way, or they don't see themselves that way, they kind of shy away from doing things. And so our approach many times is not to create something in someone that doesn't exist, but to give someone a perspective to where they can see something that already has existed. They just weren't aware of it. So a lot of the times your self-belief is very much a result of who you surround yourself with. Because if you're in a community of people that are always pushing you because they say, hey man, I know you can do this, I know you can do this, that's going to, at some point you're going to test that. At some point you're going to test that theory. I remember with my kids, my son in particular, as a baby, babies are always crawling. But then parents start to grab the baby by the hand and they stand them up. The baby doesn't decide to stand up on its own usually. It's usually somebody else comes and stands that baby up and holds the baby
Showing
until
them
the
the
baby,
impossible.
showing them it's possible. And then what the parent does is the parent backs away from the child after the child kind of gets the idea of standing and says, all right, now come here, come here. And so at some point, I think the idea of the belief that we have in ourselves doesn't originate so much in us. It's there, but it takes somebody else to kind of prod that thing and get it out of us to where we can say, wait, I can do this thing by myself. And so then that coach figure comes and tests you again, and so it gets you to the next level.
Mm-hmm. I like that point a lot, because when I came to the States, one of the things I had to learn, obviously in addition to English and everything else, was I remember I had this vivid memory of myself and my dad, and he was teaching me how to ride a bike. And so if you think about it, coming from a different country where I didn't know how to ride a bike, I didn't have a bike. So now all of a sudden I come here and there's this bicycle in front of me and everyone's doing it.
You know.
So you kind of like have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be that one kid in the neighborhood that doesn't know
Don't
how to
know,
ride a
right,
bike. So I got on the bike and I fell multiple times. I don't even think I made it out of the driveway at first. I just kept falling left and right. And so after a while, he would hold me on one side and say, just, you gotta pedal. You gotta start going, start steering. And I remember this motion, and all of a sudden it just slowed down, and then it just became straight.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I know, I'm pedaling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not falling. So I think it's very important to surround yourself with people who are going to help you and also push you and help you exceed the limitations that you set for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that ultimately is the thing that happens in our mind, is we live not only with limitations that we set for ourselves, but I also think that we live in an environment where people set those limitations for you. So if the 5 people that surround you are those that won't go after their goals
Right.
or won't do a certain thing,
Right.
then how can you break through that?
Exactly.
What can you do on your end that's going to say, okay, just because they're not doing it, I can?
You have to want more. One of the great deceptions in our culture is this whole idea of being a self-made person.
Mhm.
And this whole idea of like this hyper individuality to where, you know, my truth is my truth and I'm me and you're you, and we create this idea of separation as if we can exist apart from the other person.
Mm.
And if we're not careful, we'll allow that perspective to be the thing that drives us in our lives to
Yep.
where, well, I just want to do and I just want to do. When the reality is that there's no great success that has ever happened in this world that has happened outside of community. You have to have it. And so going back to what you said, you're right. If you're surrounded by 5 people that don't want to do anything, you could be very complacent and comfortable sitting in that environment, and if that's what you want, then that's what you want.
Uh-huh.
But even in that kind of a realm, you're holding yourself accountable to a standard that's just a lower standard or a different standard
Yeah.
than someone else.
Yeah.
Because you take people like that and you put them with 5 different friends.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we see this in our men's group a lot. What our group tends to provide is you have a certain group of people that hang out with a certain group of people, and then we come and interject something different. We give them a different community to be around,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always that initial resistance because now I'm pushing you to do something you don't want
New
to do.
concept.
I'm giving you new ideas. I'm challenging your norms. I'm challenging what you adapted to or what you've embraced.
Mm-hmm.
But what that does is it stirs something on the inside of you. You start to think, like the baby.
Yeah.
Maybe I can stand up.
Yeah.
Let me try it.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I can walk. Let me try it. And so the whole concept of self-accountability is huge, but it has to be married to the idea of community. It has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you surround yourself, you know, with the group that we're in, Friends of Peter, the thing that did for me personally is I'm with a bunch of guys that are always wanting to push. You know, the guys that I work with in my men's group, Isaac is just brutal with pushing. I'm like, I need that. And so for me, part of myself, again, my self-accountability always goes back to the idea of community.
Uh-huh.
That's what keeps me moving.
What type of questions can people ask themselves as they're developing this community? And what I mean by that is at least surrounding yourself with the 5 people that can help them elevate whatever it is that they're looking for to that next level. You know, do you remember kind of some of the early moments in your life when you were started to develop that? Because I know for me, I mean, I've gone from multiple people,
Yeah.
multiple groups, and I've had to make the hard decisions,
Mhm.
such as to not hang out with certain people because I knew that there just wasn't a way that we were benefiting each other. So I started to ask myself, okay, how are they helping me? How are we helping each other? What's the greater purpose? Are we going towards a common goal?
Mhm.
Is there anything that stands out in your life or a story that part clicked and you said, okay, I shouldn't be hanging out with these people. Instead, I need to look for these people who can help me solve these questions.
Isaac was one of the guys who I hang out with, and when I was transitioning from the sheriff's office into the world that I'm in now, I'd said that I wanted to write a book, but it was just a thought. And so now I meet this guy who had just, he was finishing working on his book. And so we were talking, I was like, okay, you know, what's the process, what's the thing, man, just sit down and start writing. I was like, well, yeah, you know, but I want to get my thoughts together. He said, no, that's excuses. He's just sit down and start writing. All right, cool. So he started badgering me like every day. He's like, well, first he made it real simple. He says, here's what you do. He says, you know how you make schedule appointments with people. He says, schedule an appointment with yourself every day, 1 hour. Nobody gets that slot. You get that slot. You write 1 hour every day. And I was like, all right, that's a good idea. Man, that dude stayed on me over and over. Hey, did you do it? Hey, did you do it? Hey, no, I didn't. Hey, did you do it? One day I'm like, this dude's getting on my nerves. I'm just go ahead and knock
Just
it out.
gotta do it.
And done. And I noticed that when I started writing, that hour turned into like 4 or 5 hours.
Mhm.
And then what happened was you get like hooked on that feeling
Mhm.
of accomplishment. It's like, oh man, I did that.
Mhm.
And you go back and you read your work. It's like, oh, this is great. Oh, I should do more of this. And then the process just kind of starts itself. So I feel it's almost like a car where sometimes you just need the jumper cables to start it. But
Yeah.
once you get it started, if it's something that you're passionate about, man, that thing will run itself. And so the question that I ask myself is, who does well what I would like to do well?
Mm.
And how can I go be with those people?
Mhm.
And who, because in my mind, and this is just me, like there's the me that I am, and he's okay, and then there's the
And there's
me
the
that I could
future.
be.
Yeah.
And what does he look like?
Mhm.
And so what is the me that I am doing to create that picture of that person? I'm not gonna do it myself.
Mhm.
So what does that guy look like? What attributes does he have? And who do I know right now that reflects those attributes? And you go spend time with those people.
Mm. So clearly you've done it. I mean, the book is in
Yes,
front
sir.
of us.
Yes, sir.
So
This is the
you-
second one.
You've committed to your
Yeah.
word,
Yes, sir.
and you made a product out of it.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about why this book was written in the first place, and then anything else that sticks out from it, or maybe
Sure.
even from the process. What was it like to write a book? What was it like to? I know you briefly mentioned the fact that committing yourself to an hour a week, at least starting off,
Right.
was challenging.
Was.
But how'd you get over that hump?
The hump kind of disappeared after I started the process. Like
Mhm.
it seems like a hump when you're standing on this side of it,
Mm-hmm.
but the more you walk and do it, the more you realize it's not as much of a hump as you really think it is, especially if it's something that you're already kind of passionate about. I'm a passionate communicator. So it seemed like, oh man, sitting down for an hour. But then it's like, when you think of it practically, you're sitting down giving yourself an hour to communicate. Oh, okay, that's not so bad. And so when I wrote the first book was kind of, 30, 40 pages. I think it stopped at 60 pages in the first book.
Mhm.
Because like, all right, cool, I got it all out. Well, the number one critique I got from my first book is, man, that was too short.
Mhm.
And so when I started writing this one, I was trying to be brief again, and I gave it to my editor, and she sat me down. She said, Josh, this is your number one problem. You want to say a lot, but you don't want to bore people to death. She's like, write what you want to say. It's your book. I was like, okay. So I mean, I doubled, almost tripled the size of my first book with this one.
Mhm.
But again, it's giving yourself the freedom to actually pursue what it is that you really want. And then putting yourself with the people that believe in you enough to help push you to pursue the thing that you want.
Mm. How do you? This is a question that I've tried to answer for myself for quite some time, honestly. How do you create that freedom? How I know that we have certain hours during the day where we can't pursue
Sure.
other ventures and endeavors, but at the same time we still have to. It seems like that the one thing that is always there is finances.
Of course.
How do you create enough financial freedom, especially for those who, let's say, are not in that position where they can wake up and write a book for 5 hours
Right.
and then still be able to have enough money to pay the bills?
Sure.
So how do you juggle the two? Were you in a similar position as well?
Yes,
at that time?
absolutely. Because it costs money to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Editing costs money. 2 cents, 10 cents a word, depending on the editor you're dealing with.
Better
all
choose
this
your
stuff.
word
Yeah.
wisely.
Very well, exactly. And that's hard for me, especially when I want to be like the major communicator. It's like, wait, I got to be careful because it's going to be 10 cents a minute, 10 cents a word to have this stuff edited. Here's what I found. You always have money for what you want.
Mm.
I think if a person sat down and they looked at their bank statements of everything that they spent their money on, because I hear this all the time, I don't have money for this. I didn't have money to write a book the first time or the second time. But yes, I did. All the money we spend on going out and hanging out and all the money we spend on all kinds of frivolous, stupid things. We spend so much time giving our money to other people's dreams.
Yeah.
And that's what blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, if I go buy a product, that product is some dream that somebody else has.
Yes.
And so I'm gonna go give him money for his dream and at the expense of my own?
Mm-hmm.
I'm off.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started, you just start where you can. If you can just get down on the computer and write, like if it's writing a book, sit on the computer and write. It doesn't cost you any money. It's not gonna. You don't do it at the expense of your job, obviously. You let that stuff work. And I think the problem sometimes is that we're impatient, and we won't just do the small things to get us down the path. But the journey creates momentum.
And discipline.
And discipline, because the closer you get to it, the more of a reality it becomes,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you can actually see it, and the more you can see something, the more committed to it you will become.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is just right now where you're standing so far away. You know, think about it like if you're running or if you're working out or something. If you know you have to do 100 push-ups or run a mile, on push-up number 1, it sucks. Step number 2, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something that happens when you get to like those last couple of steps.
Yeah.
That no matter how tired you are, like your mind finds like I'm right there,
Yeah.
and you can see it. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint." So when they can't see it, they don't restrain themselves. The opposite of that is true. When you can see it, you will restrain yourself. So the thought about wanting to quit, when you can't see the vision, yeah, it's easy to want to quit.
Yeah.
But when you see it, all of a sudden, no, I can't quit now.
Yeah. All the excuses just go away.
They go away. When I was recovering from my injury on my tactical unit, I had to do this physical test to prove that I was up to par. And it required a lot of running, and so we did a quick sprint, and then we had, later on, we'd had a 1.5 miles that we had to run. Well, I pulled my hamstring in the quick sprint. First thing out the gate, pulled my hamstring.
Wow.
Pop, bad, turning black, not good. So the way we had 4 events going back to back to back. We had to run, we had to do push-ups, we had to do some sit-ups, and then one more thing, and then we had to do this 1.5 miles, and you had like maybe a 45-second break or maybe a couple minute break in between each item. First thing, pop, doing this thing.
Mm.
And so I'm thinking as it's swelling and getting worse, I finished that run. I'm not going to be able to run this 1.5 miles.
Mm.
So now I'm doing my push-ups, swelling, getting worse. Get doing my push-ups, go get some ibuprofen, dose heavy on some ibuprofen. Go do my next thing. And again, this is steadily getting, and it's messing with my mind. But the issue was I had gone through too much to quit now.
To get to that point, yeah.
I've
You
gone
had to
through too
finish.
much to quit now. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I get on there, start doing that 1.5 miles. Every step hurt. Every step hurt. Every step hurt. But I'm not about to get kicked out now. And I'm not about to let all this stuff that the naysayers have said. I'm like I said, when you can see it,
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden you will restrain yourself like you've never restrained yourself. You will push yourself like you've never pushed yourself. The problem is some of us have never gotten ourselves close enough to it to even see it like that.
Yeah.
Because we won't take the first steps.
Yeah.
I passed that test. I ran that 1.5 miles on a bum black hamstring. And as soon as I got through that line, I collapsed, man. I went and got ice. I was out of work for 2 or 3 days getting that thing. But I did it.
Yeah. Wow, that's important. No, I completely agree with you. I think setting one goals is one thing, but actually getting close to them. And the interesting part about goal setting, at least from my experience, is that it very rarely comes in the form that you expect it.
Of course.
So you think you have a goal of reaching to X person,
Mm-hmm.
and you think it's just going to be a straight shot, email, phone call, whatever it is. And that's how we're, I think, programmed to think.
Yeah.
Is that it's, okay, all you have to do is just pick up the phone,
Mm-hmm.
start dialing a couple numbers, and you'll start making money, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it
We
never, it never turns out that way.
It's not.
Like the connection sometimes comes through having a conversation with you, having a conversation with a complete stranger that you meet on a road. And it's just always being, from my perspective, just open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you stay like that, then that's how things actually flourish and become actual things. I wanted to jump back from holding yourself accountable to holding yourself accountable to other people. So clearly based on the work that you've done, there is a level that you've developed where you have to hold yourself accountable to other people. Because if you don't deliver on certain actions, for example, the conference we spoke of earlier, if you don't deliver on certain things like booking the speakers, booking hotel rooms, whatever else it might be, conference is not going to happen.
Right.
Therefore, that's an opportunity that's lost on a potential impact.
Yep.
So how do you do that? How do you kind of balance the two, saying, okay, I know I have to do this for myself, but then I also know I have to do this for other people.
In my mind, and quick plug, this is in my first book. In my mind, there is no such thing as a selfless act.
Mm-hmm.
So then everything I do is connected to everything I do all the time. There's never a separation. It might not be visible, but everything I do is always connected to everything I do all the time. So just like I hold myself accountable, or I hold myself accountable to other people, it's about the vision. Do I really want to get this thing done?
Mm-hmm.
And what am I going to need to do in order to get that thing done? Because everything I do is connected to everything I do. And so being lazy on one front, it impacts another front.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't, with this conference right now, we're kind of in crunch mode right now. But you gotta, they talk about begin with the end in mind. Why do we do this thing to begin with? Why do we start this conference thing to begin with? Well, because we wanted to provide a solution to the fact that our city is so separated, and there's not a lot of unity, especially and there's so many dynamic people.
Uh-huh.
And so we wanted to create something that would give the city an opportunity to see all the dynamic people that are actually here in Austin, but not see them way over there. See them right here, and then connect and allow relationships to develop. And let's just come and celebrate life together as men and be strong and encourage each other. And so when you're like, wait a minute, so why did we start? Okay, this is why we started that. That's where this is important.
Got it.
Because if I don't make this phone call, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the question goes back to, do you even really believe in what you're doing to begin with? Because if you don't really believe in it, then anything that comes up is an excuse to not follow through. But if you do really believe in it, no excuse is enough, because this has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This has to happen. And so our why becomes so important. You know, going back to the idea there's no such thing as a selfless act. In my first book, I referenced this mother that goes to work tirelessly, and then when she gets done going to work, she comes home and she takes care of the kids, and then she cooks, and then she cleans, and then she takes them to practice, and all these things that she does, and people will look at her and be like, oh, she's so selfless, because all she does is think about the children.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the truth. In her mind, she has an idea of what a good mother looks like. And so in order to live up to the standard that she has in the inside of her heart, nothing will get in the way of not living up to that standard. And guess who benefits from it? Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. And when people lose themselves, many times it's the idea that they have a perception of themselves that they're not living up to. And that's when we see ourselves getting into depression. That's when we see ourselves, you know, over coping with whatever it is, because we've kind of lost that vision. But again, the key is vision.
Based on my experience, it seems like some of the times when we do lose ourselves, it's because of the pressures and images that are created from other people. So how do you stay true to yourself and your message and your belief during times like that?
Sure.
When there's so many other people around you that want you to do something else, or that think what you're doing has no value, has no impact. So how do you stay motivated and just rooted within your message that no matter what anyone says, you still will have the power to keep going and persevere through that?
I have two almost conflicting thoughts about that, because on one side, surround yourself with people that are going to push you to get to your goal and your end game.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, surround yourself with people that'll tell you and love you enough to tell you when you need to redirect. And I think sometimes we get so much in this thing where we're like, oh, all I want is people that support me, and all I want is people that are going to push me forward. Well, if you're going towards a cliff and all you have is people that are pushing you forward, they're just making your destruction that much quicker. And so you need people that can tell you, hey,
Help you
look,
recognize.
this might not be the direction you want to go, but not from a place of them telling you what to do, but from a place of them giving you perspectives that you can see. And then that will kind of help you know, do I even need to continue going this direction, or do I need to kind of adjust or redirect? Because our vision sometimes that we have internally, like we'll see something and the idea is really kind of abstract, and it's not till we start taking steps towards it, to where it starts becoming more and focus. And so you have to be big about seeking wise counsel. Because those that have been to where you're wanting to go, or those that have seen some things that you haven't seen, will help put the pieces together. And so that's the part that kind of helps me stay motivated. Because I know what I want. I might not be 100% sure quite how to get it, but I'm open to being told this isn't the best or that isn't the best, because now in that, like, oh man, my community loves me. They want to see me succeed. Oh, of course, if they want to see me succeed, I got to go for it. And unfortunately, we have situations where there are people that don't have a community that wants them to succeed.
Yeah.
Or doesn't want them to out-succeed them. And going back to the taking care of yourself thing, when you start getting so much opposition from everybody over everything you do, it might be time to put yourself in another community that's different than the one that you're in right now. Not to leave them,
But
not
just get some different perspectives.
but just to get some
and
different
build up your
perspectives.
self-confidence as well.
Exactly.
To get back on that horse and keep going.
Because you got to ask yourself sometimes, is it just me, or is it the people that I'm around? And if you're so close, sometimes you can't tell the difference. And so it's very, very beneficial to set yourself in a different setting, in a different group. Just give it some time so that you can figure out, is this me, or is this the... And then you might find out that you might have been, on the right path all along, but somebody else didn't want you to do better than them. They say misery loves company. And it's very unfortunate when we do our work in the community. There's a lot of people and family members that don't want I had a wife tell me one time to my face, my husband doesn't want to be a part of your program. He doesn't need anything you guys have to say. Okay. But let me think, man. You got a program that's nationally award winning, that's helping bring families closer together. It's good information. It's truth. And you don't want your husband to be a part of that at all? Why not?
What started it initially?
What started it is one of the guys I was working with, Isaac, wanted to provide an environment for men to kind of come out of their house or come out of wherever they were and just sit around with other men and figure out life together. Because we're so busy working. But some guys had so much baggage that they were carrying that they didn't have a safe space, to do it. And so that meeting turned into, was being paired with some anger management courses, because that's what his background was anger management. So he started hosting these meetings, and he kind of got a little bit of reputation. So the housing authority came and asked him, hey, would you do some fatherhood type stuff, for our residents? And so that was kind of how that was birthed. But the idea was to strengthen, to support, and to educate men to just do better, whatever that means. And so we're very passionate about seeing people grow. Not making anyone do anything, just providing an
Just giving
environment.
them the options,
Giving you an
providing the
opportunity.
right environment of other people as well.
Or even asking you questions that you just haven't been asked before. It's not my job to tell you you're right or you're wrong about anything.
Correct.
It's my job to just ask the question and make you think.
Uh-huh.
We all have belief systems, and sometimes those belief systems push us forward. Sometimes those belief systems keep us back. And it's not until somebody says, hey, did you know you were wearing pink sunglasses? But you're like, I mean, it's so funny to me. How many times you've seen people and they're like, that wear glasses?
Uh-huh.
They're like, hey, where's my glasses? Where are my glasses? And you're looking at them like, dude, they're on your face. But if that's true of people that wear glasses, how even more true would that be of all of us that have these belief systems? They don't even know it.
And wearing different masks.
They don't even know it.
Wanting to be people that we really aren't. That's very interesting. Final thought for today's episode. This is something that I've been wanting to do, and I've actually started doing this myself. I think I'm on day 9. I started reading a book called 365 Thank Yous. And it's essentially, you write a thank you to a person within your life that has had an impact on you. And so I started doing this, and that's how I'm practicing my self-accountability, holding myself accountable every day, wake up, do it, go to the next task. Who or what are you thankful for, and why?
Wow. I wrote a post on Facebook the other day. It said, prideful people taught me how to be humble. Selfish people taught me how to give. I'm most thankful. There's a couple people I can name. My children push me. I've got a good circle of friends that push me. But I'm thankful for the father figures that I had in my life. I like to say that I had 4. And 2 of them were really, really incredible men.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of them were really, really terrible men.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just as thankful for both of them, or all of them, because it taught me this is what that looks like, this is what that looks like, and it gave me such a wide, broader perspective that I'm so, so grateful for. Because I think had I not seen all these different angles of what it meant to be a good father or a good father figure, I think I might have slipped into something I may not have really wanted for myself or for those that are connected to me. And so having seen what these things look like, having seen what sacrifice looks like, having seen what being respectable and being honorable looks like, having seen what being manipulative and controlling looks like, having seen what being abusive looks like, having seen all that stuff, very, very thankful. Because now when I deal with the fathers that I deal with and work with, I'm very empathetic. I can understand.
Yeah.
I can understand.
You have a foundation. You know where to begin with.
I can empathize with the father that is physically abusive to his children or to his spouse. I'm not saying I like him. I'm not saying I'm supportive. I see where you're coming from. You feel like you've lost control in life, so you have to get it somewhere. I get it. I can see that. I can appreciate all this stuff, and so it gives me such this idea. Like when I see stuff and when I encounter stuff, I'm not surprised by a lot of things. I can get it. It makes sense to me. And when something makes sense at all, then you can start to navigate with how do we do something about it. So I am most thankful for my father figures, all 4 of them.
Where do people find you, and most importantly, where do people find the book?
JoshuaDCBanks.com. I got a website to make life easy.
Wow.
The books are there. Everything to contact me is there. JoshuaDCBanks.com. D as in dog, C as in cat, all one word. You can find me there.
Awesome. Well, appreciate having you on the show.
Thanks,
Thank
Ollie.
you so much.